What are Steve Sarkisian's impressions of Cam Coleman 1 month into his Longhorn career? We'll let you hear from the coach next on Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are locked on to the Texas Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in the world. I'm your host, BK, Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin local, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you, everydayers, for making Locked On Longhorns your first listen every single day. We are, of course, free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well, so please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving a comment. So thank y'all sincerely for that. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. It's Mazda, move and be moved. We'll let you hear from Steve Sarkisian a couple of different times throughout today's episode. An update on Laurence Seymore and his fight for eligibility in 2026. Plus, Sark answers the question, why did he revamp the running back room the way that he did this offseason? But first, let's talk Cam Coleman, because there were very few, if any, offseason storylines that mattered more around Texas Longhorn football than the recruitment of Cam Coleman. When the former five-star receiver entered the portal after a couple of years at Auburn, programs across the country immediately got involved. Alabama, USC, A&M, Texas Tech, they all made pushes. In the end, obviously, the Longhorns were able to win out, and it was a huge win. Cam Coleman, the top-ranked non-quarterback in the portal. Some rankings had him as the top overall player in the transfer portal. He's a monster. We've talked about that a lot on this show, and we probably will talking about that over the next few months. Well, enough of me talking. Steve Sarkisian yesterday was asked about Cam Coleman and his early impressions of his new star wide receiver, and Sark spoke for nearly 3 minutes talking about everything that Cam Coleman has brought to the University of Texas. I'm going to stop talking now. Here is Coach Sark.
Yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, Cam has been a fabulous addition so far. And what I knew of Cam Coleman early on was watching Auburn film when I was getting ready to play Oklahoma, or when they're on the tape, I'm like, this guy's really good. This number 8's really good. When he went into the portal, it was like, okay, this is probably going to be a priority for a lot of teams around the country. What type of individual is this guy? And you start making your calls, and you're calling people that have coached him and coached against him. And we never played Auburn, so I didn't get a chance to see him in person. And then you start getting on a phone call, and then you get onto a FaceTime and a Zoom, and then you get him on your campus. And the biggest thing that came out of it for me was what an awesome individual. This kid is an awesome kid. And he hasn't disappointed since he's arrived. And I think one thing that has been unique, when he's arrived, you got to remember Ryan Wingo and Emmett Mosley are both coming off of injuries right now. And so they're not able to do the things that Cam's being required to do, from a fundamental standpoint, from a workouts with Coach Becton, from a skill development standpoint. And for a guy of his caliber, he could say, well, those two guys aren't working today. Maybe I'll take a step back, and maybe I don't need to work today. It's been the total opposite. This guy's going for it. And he came here with real intentions and a real reason of understanding he wants to compete for a national championship, and he wants to put himself in the best position to get ready for the NFL. And he came to a pro-style offense for a reason. We've obviously had a pretty good recent history of receivers getting drafted now into the NFL fairly highly. And so he understands why he came. He understands, hey, I need to put my work in so when those two guys come back and Khaleke Lockett continues to develop and Dalen McCutcheon and all these other aspects of our team, that I need those guys to play really well so I don't get double coverage all the time. But they need me to play really well so they don't get double coverage all the time. And surely if we're all playing really good, now the running game can be a lot better, because now we're getting split safety defense, and now it's one less guy in the box that Raleek and Hollywood and Derek and Michael, and it's one less guy that the offensive line has to block. And so the whole thing ties together. And so the understanding that he had of all of that, I think, was probably the most impressive thing. to go along with the individual that this guy is. This guy is he's an awesome individual, and I look forward to y'all getting to spend some time with him because I think you're gonna be very impressed.
So there was 2 minutes and 40 seconds of Steve Sarkisian raving about Cam Coleman, talking about the player he is, talking about the person he is, talking about the work ethic that he has brought to the table from pretty much the moment he stepped foot on campus. All really, really good things to hear. And a few big takeaways. Number one, doesn't sound like there's a lot of diva with Cam Coleman. Wide receiver is the most diva position in football. You see it in the NFL, you see it in college, heck, you see it in high school. Those guys have egos that are bigger than seemingly any other position on the field. Cam Coleman, former 5-star out of high school. He was a top 3 recruit in the nation when he started his college career at Auburn. Again, the top-ranked player in the portal. This dude could have a giant ego, but it just doesn't sound like he does. And again, Sark spent so much time there talking about the kind of person that Cam Coleman is. And every coach and every player and every person that I talked to had nothing but great things to say about Cam Coleman. It sounds like he wasn't just doing that to try to get a job, right? Oh, let me just interview for these positions and try to get as much NIL money as I can and try to end up in the best spot for me. And then as soon as I get somewhere, I'm going to just turn into a total you-know-what. Doesn't sound like that's been the case for Cam Coleman at all. And yeah, I mean, the fact that Ryan Wingo and Emmett Mosley have been pretty limited through these winter workouts, and Cam Coleman just continues to show up every single day and put the work in. Sounds like he's treating this like he's the new guy, like he's trying to impress this new staff and his new teammates. Not, yeah, y'all know who I am. I'm Cam freaking Coleman. Y'all better recognize. It's like, no, he is trying to ingratiate himself in this locker room and put in the work. He's not acting like he's better than anybody else. And it sounds like the early returns since his arrival have been really, really good. I mean, Sark described him as an outstanding person. And again, it feels like that's all that Cam Coleman has been, getting these extra opportunities during workouts and practices. Sounds like he is taking full advantage of these things. And look, I'm not going to sit here and act like Cam Coleman did not receive a very nice NIL package from the University of Texas. But pretty much from the moment he entered the portal, the reports out there were, yeah, NIL is not his number one priority. Like, he wants to go somewhere where he can have success, compete for a championship, and develop into a really, really good NFL player who's going to be a very high draft pick next April. And that's what Texas did. Pro-style offense, an offense that has had a lot of success. You heard Steve Sarkisian talk about the track record in his tenure at Texas of all of the receivers he sent to the league. Obviously, that goes back to his time as the offensive coordinator at Alabama, too. Heck, go back to Washington and USC. All of that is absolutely there. And obviously, the Longhorns have a legit shot to compete for a national championship. So, again, the NIL's there, but all of those other things, clearly a factor in Cam Coleman's recruitment. And then Steve Sarkisian just talking about this offense as a whole. Like that's what's going to open things up for Cam Coleman. That's why I'm so confident that he is going to have his best statistical season of his college career by far, because Sark is a way better coach than Hugh Freeze, who was the guy the last 2 years at Auburn. Arch Manning is a much better quarterback than Peyton Thorne and Jackson Arnold, who were the primary quarterbacks for Cam Coleman's first 2 years at Auburn. And then you look at the running backs and the other receivers and just the talent around Cam Coleman, it's obviously a lot higher here than it was on the plains of Alabama. So that's going to make life easier for Cam Coleman as well. Look, maybe you double team him on every play. That's going to open up opportunities for Ryan Wingo and Emmett Mosley and everybody else on this offense. But I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to do that, because those guys are really, really good too. So you see why. I mean, just go watch highlights from the last couple of seasons. It's easy to see why Texas and so many other teams around college football made Cam Coleman such a high priority. And look, I just love to hear that he has attacked the work, motivated by those goals of competing for a championship and preparing for the NFL, and the fact that he understands the bigger picture of this offense and isn't a me guy. I didn't hear too many stories out of Auburn about Cam Coleman complaining that he wasn't getting the ball. The fact that he feels like a guy who's going to play for the name on the front of the jersey instead of the back, that is a really, really good thing. So it's early, but the early reviews from Steve Sarkisian, that's exactly what I hope to hear. And I think a lot of Longhorn fans probably agree with me as well. Would love to get y'all's thoughts in the comments below. Hopefully those impressions carry on to the field, because if they do, he's going to be one of the most exciting players we've had around here in a long time, and one of the most electrifying players in college football. this fall. All right, we'll take your thoughts. Again, comment below your takeaways from what Steve Sarkisian had to say about Cam Coleman. More takeaways and more sound and more video from Steve Sarkisian's Monday presser. Why did the head coach feel the need to completely revamp the Texas running back room? We will let him explain his reasoning. Coming up next on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at Mazda. This is Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. Today, we're going to give some love to Madison Booker, the Texas women's basketball star. She put on a show in the Longhorns' 92-42 victory over Mississippi State on Sunday. Yes, you heard that score right. Texas beat Mississippi State by 50 here in Austin over the weekend. And Madison Booker, as she's done so often throughout the course of her Texas career, leading the way for the Longhorns, 23 points on 8 of 12 shooting, 3 for 3 from beyond the arc. Not a huge three-point shooter. Doesn't take a lot, doesn't make a lot. Took 3. Made 3. She was incredibly efficient. Only needed to play 28 minutes because Texas just was dominating this game from the opening tip. But Madison Booker, one of the best players in women's college basketball. She showed us why once again over the weekend. And what she did and what she does reminds us what it really takes to raise the bar. It's the extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that fire, that grit, and the I never quit. Mazda puts that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. It's Mazda. Move and be moved. Also, some love to FanDuel. Hey, have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes going on right now. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win a trip to the NBA Finals for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, everything, the whole experience taken care of. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. You Spurs fans, you Rockets fans, maybe you just feel like OKC's going back-to-back. Doesn't matter. Any futures bet to win it all, to win a conference, whatever, you're going to add an extra layer of excitement to your basketball watching down the stretch. But also, not only could your pick net you some cash, could send you to the finals as well. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip for 2 to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back. Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Please do not forget about the Locked On Everydayer Club. If you're looking for another way to support me and support the Locked On Longhorns show and the Locked On Podcast Network, this is a great way to do it. But also, you're not just supporting us, you're supporting yourself as well. Because if you join the Everydayer Club, you're going to get this show and every episode of Locked On Longhorns ad-free, no interruptions, and access to a members-only Discord server and so much more. It's all just $5 a month. That is it, or $50 a year. Go to lockedonlonghorns.supercast.com for more, or you can just check the link in the show notes for more information. All right, so Cam Coleman was probably the biggest individual upgrade that the Longhorns made in the transfer portal. But from a position room standpoint, nothing improved more than the running backs this offseason. Raleek Brown and Hollywood Smothers, both coming into Texas. I know you lost Trey Wisner. I know what he meant to this program the last couple of years. I know C.J. Baxter's gone. I know Christian Clark's gone. It wasn't all addition, but these 2 additions are really, really good. 2 first-team all-conference performers in 2025. 2 guys who combined for more than 2,000 rushing yards on 6 yards per carry. They had 13 total touchdowns between them, more than 2,500 all-purpose yards between the 2 of them this past year. 2 absolute studs. And it was obviously a big deal. Look, Texas fans were pretty excited when the Longhorns got Raleek Brown. He came first, and it's like, all right, that's a pretty nice pickup. One of the top running backs in the portal. I kind of thought that was it. But a couple of days later, the Longhorns are able to flip Hollywood Smothers, who was committed to Alabama. He's also signed and is a part of the class. I mean, amazing. I didn't think that was possible. I thought Texas would get 1 top-flight running back. Instead, they end up with 2. Steve Sarkisian yesterday was asked, hey, why'd you go after both of those guys? Why was it such a priority for you to turn your running back room around? Here's Sark talking about what those guys bring to the table and really the entire tailback room here in 2026.
I just felt like we had an opportunity to get back to the style of players that fit what we were trying to do. Like I said, at a cost point, everything, there's value on everything. And I think adding Hollywood and adding Raleek, two really versatile players that are explosive players that can run the style of runs that we like to run, that are very versatile of catching the ball out of the backfield, that have home run hitting ability. We have to get back to being the explosive offense that we're accustomed to being, that those two guys fit. If you would have told me in December that we were going to, or at the new year that we were going to bring in two first team all conference players, I probably wouldn't have believed you, but it hit right. And those two guys had the right mentality to come in. And oddly enough, since they've come in, they're probably two of the closest transfers. They've almost become best friends on our team already. Like they understand they need each other. And I think they understand historically for us in our program, we've always, done well when we've had two that could play off of one another. And so it's been a great marriage. Now, that's not to take anything away from a Michael Terry or a Derek Cooper or these other guys that are developing in our program. But to get two experienced players that have done it at a high level in the Power 4 level, all conference type players, I think is going to benefit us, and I think it's going to benefit them in the long run as well.
So a few thoughts on that. Easy for me to say. Number one, and this probably shouldn't be my first thought, but you heard Steve Sarkisian reference Michael Terry there. He actually referenced Michael Terry with the running backs a couple of different times throughout that press conference. So Michael Terry recruited as an athlete, started his Texas career as a wide receiver. It sounds like running back is where the Longhorns envision him moving forward. There you go. Back to the Hollywood Smothers, Raleek Brown conversation. I mean, how could you not love that those guys are getting along? I think everyone's first reaction, again, Raleek Brown was the guy who committed first to Texas this offseason. Everyone's first reaction when Hollywood Smothers announced that he was committing was, does that mean we're losing Raleek Brown? Like, is he going to be okay with this? He probably committed to Texas thinking he was going to be the clear-cut number one bell cow guy in this backfield, and now all of a sudden they bring in a guy who was a higher-rated transfer than he was. Is he going to stick around? Well, he stuck around, he signed, and it sounds like those guys are boys. And as Sark said, and he's absolutely right, I mean, it's not just Texas. It's any backfield at any level of football. If you have a nice complement, if you have two guys who can take the pressure off of each other, take the workload off of one another, keep them fresh throughout the course of a game, throughout the course of a season, that makes life so much easier for running backs. And just look, go back to 2022, Sark's second year. Bijan Robinson's final year in Austin, Roschon Johnson's final year in Austin. Case in point, Bijan was a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. We see what he's doing on Sundays. Roschon Johnson ended up getting drafted in the 4th round that year. Both of those guys had productive seasons in 2022. Obviously, Bijan did a bulk of this, but they combined for more than 2,100 rushing yards and 23 touchdowns that season. That might have been a sell from Steve Sarkisian to these guys. It's like, look, both of these dudes had great years in Austin. In our system, we got them turned into draft picks. That can be y'all. I don't think either of these guys is going to go as high as Bijan did, but I do think Raleek Brown and Hollywood Smothers both have NFL potential. And look, Texas has a history, and Steve Sarkisian, hell, this predates Steve Sarkisian, but Sark has it too, of developing really good running backs. 2 years in a row, Texas had the very first running back selected in the draft with Bijan in that 23 draft and then Jonathan Brooks in the 2024 draft. So we've seen it around here. Those guys have seen it. That is a big deal. And again, I love that they are getting along and they're pushing each other. And that's just one less headache that potentially could have been there if those guys were complaining and mad about playing time. It seems like they realize how important they can be for one another. And obviously the explosiveness. It just was not there. No disrespect to Trey Wisner and CJ Baxter and Christian Clark. We didn't see a ton of Christian Clark last year, obviously. There was just no home run ability with this Texas running back room. And I get it. The offensive line was awful, but the running backs were also a part of why this running game was the worst we've seen around here since World War II. Seriously, most of us weren't alive the last time Texas had a running game as inefficient as the one we saw in 2025. It's a huge part of Steve Sarkisian's offense running the football. That opens up things down the field with these great receivers. Look at the Alabama offense in 2020. We did an episode comparing this offense in 26 at Texas to that 2020 Alabama offense. We're all looking for signs of that. A huge part of why that Bama team was so good and why Devontae Smith was able to win the Heisman and why John Mechie was so good and Mac Jones was so good. They had Najee Harris running for 1,500 yards and 20-something touchdowns. If you can get big-time running back production, that is going to make life so much easier for Arch Manning in this Texas passing game. That's why Sark went out and did what he did, and I'm so glad he did because I think this running game is going to be a problem. Last year was a problem for Texas. This year, I think it's a problem for everyone playing Texas. That's much better. All right, one more segment. More sound from Steve Sarkisian coming up. An update on Laurence Seymore. Speaking of the offensive line, will the former All-American offensive lineman be ruled eligible for the Longhorns in 2026? Sark gave us a little bit of an update. We'll let you hear from him next on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at Indeed. Workplace chaos, inbox overflowing, deadlines stacking up, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need to make the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people that actually fit what you are looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that says it all. In the last minute that I've been talking to y'all, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, you don't want to be spending a bunch of time just searching, trying to find the right candidate. No, you'd rather be spending that time interviewing candidates who actually check your boxes. Indeed Sponsored Jobs can help with that. Less stress, less time wasted, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get $75 in sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status that it deserves. All you have to do, head over to Indeed.com/podcast. Again, Indeed.com/podcast. Support this show by making sure you tell them that you heard about it on Locked On Longhorns. One more time, Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, final segment. Tuesday edition. Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. More sound and more video from Steve Sarkisian's Monday press conference. Obviously, the Longhorns went heavy in the transfer portal this offseason, and one of their last additions was former Western Kentucky offensive lineman Laurence Seymore. Looked like Texas was done in the portal, especially on the offensive line, and a lot of folks a little bit underwhelmed. We all knew how much of a need the offensive line was, and Texas had struck out on a lot of their top targets in the transfer portal. But very late in the window, they were able to pick up a commitment from a former All-American in Western Kentucky's Laurence Seymore. And it felt like he was a plug-and-play starter at left guard, which was the biggest area of problem for the Longhorns in 2025. It was great. I was pumped. What a find. Who is this guy? Why did nobody else want him? Why did it take so long for him to commit and sign with the school? Well, we found out why quickly after, because we're not sure. We weren't sure, and we're still not sure if Laurence Seymore is going to be allowed to play this year. He has appealed to the NCAA looking for another year of eligibility. If he's granted it, great. He'll be able to suit up for the Longhorns this fall. That'll be his last year. I don't think there are any questions about that. If he's not granted the eligibility, well, then he can't play for Texas, and the Longhorns have a big question mark at that left guard spot. Sark was asked yesterday for an update on the Laurence Seymore situation, and here is what he gave us.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing, he had a waiver submitted when we signed him. The NCAA has allowed us to resubmit that waiver, I think with some new information in a way that makes his case really compelling. Nothing has been decided yet. So I'm hesitant to say I'm confident in much, but I do think that with us having the opportunity to submit that waiver with our people, with some of the information Laurence was able to supply us and some of those of the previous universities that he was at, we'll see where it goes, but we haven't gotten anything back yet.
So not much of an update there from Steve Sarkisian. I didn't love hearing him say, I'm not super, well, I don't even know what he said. He didn't give a major vote of confidence there. I I don't know why I just forgot what he said. I had it in my head, but whatever. Point is, we don't know about Laurence Seymore, and it's hard to predict what the NCAA is going to do. It feels like this offseason they have typically erred on the side of not granting players extra eligibility. They rejected Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss. Now, Chambliss got eligibility approved by some local judge in the state of Mississippi. So maybe Texas tries that. If the NCAA says, no, Seymour can't play, maybe the Longhorns are like, well, let's take this to court and see what happens. Earlier this week, I think it was this weekend, Tennessee quarterback Joey Aguilar was told he can't play. The NCAA said, no, you can't. And some judge in Tennessee said, no, you can't. So every situation is different. Apples to oranges. Laurence Seymore, I think, has a better argument than either of those two guys. But point is, I don't know. You never know what to expect from the NCAA. There's no rhyme or reason to any decision that they make. And it doesn't really feel like there's much protocol for this type of process nowadays. So we'll see what happens. Would love to get an answer soon. And my overall confidence in the offensive line, really my overall confidence in this entire offense, is so dependent on Laurence Seymore. I get it. He's one player out of 11. There's still a ton of other talent with the other 10 guys. But again, with how bad left guard was last year, you just can't ignore it. You can't ignore it. And Dylan Sikorsky would probably be your left guard if Laurence Seymore can't go. Sikorsky, the transfer from Oregon State, guy was a redshirt freshman last year, only started 6 games, actually lost his job at one point in the season. I just don't know if he's ready to go up against a 9-game SEC schedule with a non-conference matchup against Ohio State. Maybe he is. Maybe he's good enough in this offseason. He works with Kyle Flood and develops, and boom, by the time we get to September, he is ready to roll. Maybe Andre Kojo, who's coming back from injury, can be that guy. Maybe it's Nick Robertson. Maybe it's somebody else. I don't know, but I don't want to have that question. I want more answers than questions. And last year, we were all a little worried about the offensive line going into the season, considering everything that Texas lost after 2024. It was worse than any of us could have imagined in our worst nightmares. And again, with Melvin Siani coming in, Brandon Baker a year better, Trevor Goosby, Connor Robertson, the offensive line on paper is already way better now than it was at this time last year. But again, left guard, you want to make sure you've got that position taken care of. You want this run game to be as effective as it can be. You want Arch Manning to have enough time to make plays down the field. You need all 5 of those guys up front being good enough to help you compete for a championship. I do think Laurence Seymore is that kind of player. I don't know about any of the other guys on this Texas roster right now. So I think it's pretty important for that guy to be a part of things. For what it's worth, again, the sound we played, not a major vote of confidence from Steve Sarkisian, but Sark did mention Seymour's name earlier in the presser a couple of different times. That was actually the very last question he got asked yesterday. It was about a 50-minute press conference, 5-0. That was the last question, but he had talked about Laurence Seymore in a few other instances. So he's obviously there. Well, at least they anticipate he will be there. I shouldn't say he's there. He's still at Western Kentucky right now getting his degree up there this semester. But the anticipation, at least, is that he will be a part of things. But again, Sark not wanting to count his chickens before they hatch. So I'm on the edge of my seat, pins and needles, waiting to see what happens there. All right. That will do it for this episode of Locked On Longhorns. If you made it this far, number 1, God bless you. Number 2, please remember to like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, rate 5 stars, all of those great things. Can't thank y'all enough for your continued support of this show. For your next listen, check out Locked On SEC. Actually was on Locked On SEC this morning. So check it out. Chris Gordy and I are talking plenty of Texas. He's always talking plenty of SEC, football, basketball, baseball, you name it. It's there all the time. You can find that show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And I might post that interview to this page a little bit later in the day. More Texas football, more takeaways from Sark's presser, some Longhorn baseball, and so much more coming up in the next episode. But that'll do it for this one. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, horns up, mics off. We'll see y'all soon. This is Locked On Longhorns.